Your bank account is a reflection of what you tolerate. Most people hate that sentence because it removes luck, removes blame, removes the economy, and places responsibility back where it belongs, on you. You don't have a money problem, you have a standards problem, and standards determine what you accept, what you reject, what you negotiate, and what you silently endure. If your standards are low, your income will eventually shrink to match them, no matter how ambitious you claim to be. Most people say they want more money, but their behavior shows they want less friction, less confrontation, less discomfort. They tolerate underpayment because asking for more feels risky, and they tolerate chaos because structure feels demanding. They tolerate disrespect because boundaries feel aggressive, and they tolerate average performance because excellence requires pressure. Wealth is not just about earning more, it's about refusing less, and most people never learn that distinction. The uncomfortable truth is simple. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you accept, repeatedly and quietly. If you accept low-paying environments, you will remain in low-paying environments, even if you work twice as hard. If you accept small thinkers around you, your ambition will slowly compress to fit their expectations. If you accept employers who undervalue you, you teach them how to treat you, and they will rarely correct it for you. Standards are silent agreements you make with reality, and reality honors those agreements with precision. Low standards feel safe and socially acceptable, while high standards feel risky and uncomfortable. Low standards make you likable. High standards make you polarizing. And most people choose to be liked instead of respected. But respect pays more than approval ever will, and leverage is built on respect, not popularity. People with low standards ask for permission before they act. People with high standards set terms before they engage. One negotiates from fear of loss, the other negotiates from certainty of value. And that internal difference multiplies income. Self-worth is the invisible multiplier behind financial growth, because you price yourself according to what you believe you're worth. If you secretly believe you're replaceable, you will behave as if you are, and the market will respond accordingly. If you believe your time is abundant, you will waste it. If you believe your energy is cheap, you will give it away. Money flows toward perceived value, and perceived value begins internally before it ever becomes external. The way you price your work reveals your internal standards, and the way you respond to rejection reveals how stable those standards truly are. The ability to walk away is one of the most powerful financial skills, yet most people cannot walk away because they don't believe something better exists. That belief requires courage, and courage requires an elevated self-concept. So instead of elevating themselves, they stay in draining jobs, limiting cities, shrinking partnerships, and misaligned opportunities. They stay because leaving would require raising their standards, and raising standards creates short-term instability. But long-term instability comes from never raising them at all, and that instability compounds silently. When you raise your standards, you lose access to certain rooms, certain people, and certain opportunities that once felt necessary. Cheap clients disappear, low-quality offers disappear, and the people who benefited from your smallness slowly fade away. That loss feels painful at first, but what replaces it is alignment, and alignment is where leverage begins. Alignment means your environment finally matches your self-respect, and self-respect is the foundation of expansion. Most people don't struggle with money, they struggle with identity, wanting rich results while maintaining average standards. They want high income without high boundaries, leverage without confrontation, and growth without friction. But leverage requires friction. Friction requires confidence, and confidence requires internal elevation. Financial growth is not primarily a spreadsheet problem, it is a self-concept problem that manifests in numbers. If your internal standard says don't ask for too much, you will consistently receive less than you're capable of earning. If your internal standard says don't inconvenience others, you will constantly inconvenience yourself and call it maturity. If your internal standard says be grateful for anything, you will live on leftovers and call it humility. Gratitude is powerful, but low standards disguised as gratitude are destructive to long-term wealth. You can be grateful and still demand better. You can be humble and still refuse mediocrity. You can be kind and still be expensive. Most people confuse high standards with arrogance, but high standards are simply clarity about what you will and will not allow in your life. Clarity creates structure. Structure creates discipline. Discipline creates expansion, and expansion creates income growth. Some people dramatically increase their earnings not because they become smarter overnight, but because they become less tolerant. They stop accepting chaos, stop accepting misalignment, stop accepting roles beneath their capability, and raise their minimum. Once the minimum rises, the average follows, and your financial baseline shifts upward permanently. Your financial ceiling is not set by the market. It is set by your tolerance for environments that shrink you. If you tolerate low pricing, you cap your revenue. If you tolerate invisibility, you remain overlooked. If you tolerate fear in negotiation, you remain underpaid. Standards are internal laws, and internal laws dictate external results with remarkable consistency. You cannot sustainably outturn your self-image, because eventually your income will collapse back to what feels familiar and acceptable. This is why some people win big and lose everything. Their standards never evolve to support their new level. Wealth requires expansion of identity before expansion of income, and identity expansion begins with raised standards. It requires seeing yourself as someone who belongs in higher rooms, someone who sets terms instead of accepting leftovers. Most people don't fail because they lack skill. They fail because they lack non-negotiables. Non-negotiables create structure. Structure creates power. Power creates options. And options create wealth. If everything in your life is negotiable, you will always negotiate downward in moments of pressure. But if certain things are non-negotiable, your time, your price, your boundaries, you begin negotiating upward. Upward negotiation changes your trajectory because you stop playing defense and start shaping the game itself. The world does not reward quiet compliance. It rewards clarity, conviction, and the courage to demand alignment. So the real question isn't how to make more money. It's what you are currently tolerating that is keeping you small. Where are you accepting less than you're capable of? And where are you lowering your standards to avoid temporary discomfort? That discomfort is not danger. It is growth trying to force expansion in your life. The moment you raise your standards, your decisions change, your conversations change, your environment changes, and eventually your income changes. Not because money magically appears, but because you no longer accept realities that contradict your value. If this made you uncomfortable, that's good. Discomfort means your standards are being questioned. If you're serious about building wealth, raise one standard this week. Increase your price, enforce a boundary, walk away from something misaligned. Then observe how your environment recalibrates around your new baseline. Because you don't rise to your goals, you rise to your standards. If you want more conversations about money, leverage, and power, subscribe to Think Richer and start thinking at a higher level.